All right, Success and Money Foundation world. We're going to go more into some of those side hustle secrets, things you need to know to be successful in life, be successful in your business, your side hustle. These are key talents and traits. As you know, persuasion influences pretty much everything you need to be successful in business. There's a lot of other things, but it all comes down to most businesses fail because of a lack of sales, that persuasion, that influence, going with another competitor, not seeing your value. Connecting, trust, marketing comes down to persuasion influence. So you see, it's a very vital part of the business that you are running. Remember, there's 4 key areas of your side hustle, of your business. We've talked about mindset, programming your mind for success, having that millionaire IQ, your core competence. You need to know what you're doing in your business. You need to be an expert in your field. Today we're going to be talking about influence. Then, of course, there are presentation skills. So let's get into the law of balance. Imagine a scale, right? You have to have this balance between the logical mind and the emotional heart. There's this balance here. And you need to have both. Because you have to understand we are swayed, we purchase, we buy based on emotion. That's what sways us. That's what motivates us. That's what drives us. But when that emotion fades, we need to have concrete logic, facts, and details why it was a good decision. So you need to have both, okay? In fact, when people have that part of their brain damaged that it feels right, they can't make decisions. So it has to look right, the numbers have to be right, and it has to feel right. That's the balance we're talking about. Someone buys a Ferrari, it felt good, it was fun, wow. But when that emotion fades, they need that logic to back up that it was a good decision. They need a good resale value, fill in the blank, whatever that is. Logical mind versus emotional heart. We need to have that balance. Both are important. Again, it has to feel right, emotion, and the numbers have to work, logic. So let's talk about this emotion, logic, this balance. A lot of people, marketing professors will say that 80% of new products fail. 80%. They've done the logic, they've done the market research, what's happening, what's going on, what are they missing? It's that emotional aspect. In fact, let me give you a case study. You have Coke and Pepsi. Now in the 70s, do a little history here, Pepsi was nothing, Coke could have bought them. All right, in the 80s, Pepsi started gaining market share. Now here's the challenge for Coke. Coke was spending 10 times more money in marketing, Pepsi's gaining market share. If you have a side hustle, you know that's not a good formula to have. And at the time, Pepsi came out with what's called the Pepsi Challenge. And what they did in blind taste tests, they found that Coke drinkers, again, blind taste tests, prefer the taste of Pepsi to Coke 3-1. We're like, wow. People were switching teams, going from Coke to Pepsi. Coke's freaking out. Again, they're spending more money. So what they do? So they said, well, maybe tastes are changing, a little sweeter. So they went to the lab, created what they called New Coke. It was a little different taste, a little sweeter, a little different. And they didn't just launch it. They, in blind taste tests, found that Coke drinkers preferred New Coke to Old Coke 2-1. So numbers lined up. They launched it, and it was an incredible failure. They lost millions of dollars on this. People were fighting in the supermarkets. There was bomb threats, picketing. Customer service was inundated. People went crazy, out of control. They had to pull it and replace it with what they called Coke Classic. All over a soda. So they interviewed the COO and said, okay, what happened here? What's going on? He says, we underestimated the emotion and passion people had for our product. Because when you have your side hustle, your business, whatever you're selling, whatever you're doing, we get too close to it. We forget the emotional impact we have with our consumers, our customers, our clients. Those are things to take a look at. We just lose it. We get too close to it. It sounds good. And we think it's the best thing in the world, but people it didn't work. For example, a refrigerator company found out people open their fridge and they sit there gawking. Okay. It wastes, $100 a year in electricity? So they went to people and said, hey, what if we created a see-through refrigerator? You'd save $100 a year. You'd go green. It would be fantastic. People are like, well, that's a good idea, logically. Emotionally, it comes out, and what happens? People didn't buy it. It failed because you don't want Aunt Edna looking in your see-through fridge going, is that meatloaf or pudding, right? You just don't want that. Or Cadillac went to people during the energy crisis. What if we made a more gas efficient, smaller Cadillac? Would you like that? Oh, it sounds like a good idea. They launched it, Cadillac Cimarron. It was a failure because you don't buy a Cadillac for gas efficiency to be small. It's either going to be really big or really fast. So that is the balance between emotion and logic. So again, we have this balance. The emotion, that could be the subconscious minds, your feelings. You have your logic, that's your conscious minds. They'll fight with each other sometimes, but your job is to have good. It has to feel right, look right, the numbers have to match. So what stirs an audience? I mean, really, what drives them? We know that motivation, that's what drives us, that motivation, that energy, that emotion. We still have to have the logic. And sometimes we didn't even know the difference between the two. There's a study at a college. They took a class, divided in half, gave them a very controversial topic. All right, pretty simple. They said, hey, record a video to persuade people. Half the class could use emotion, only emotion. The other half could use only logic. That was the difference. And they played them to other students and asked them, is this a logical appeal or emotional appeal? And people were all over the map. Okay, well, so they went back and they showed other students this video, motion, logic, and they asked one more question. Do you agree or disagree? Here's where it gets interesting. When they agreed with the presentation, they said it was logical, whether it was or not. If they disagreed, they said it was emotional, whether it was or not. So that plays into emotion and persuasion also. Politics, logical or emotional? We're not going to go into that, but you already know that's a highly emotional area. So let's get into the logical side. You still need to have it, because when the emotion fades, they have to have the reason, the logical why it was a good decision. So you can use testimonials, statistics, studies. This is evidence. So evidence makes your argument ring true in persuasive situations. Testimony is a testimony of someone they respect, someone they know, an expert that's saying the same thing that you're saying. A statistic, you know this one, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend using graph and charts. Then you can also use studies. Those work very well. The research, the statistics, the studies, they can go hand in hand, but you notice I use a lot of studies, verify it with studies. That's the logical side, and that's something you need. But you need to make sure it's clear and concise, because there's a comprehension issue here that 97% misunderstand the message. In fact, after watching commercials, 97% of viewers misunderstood some part of every message they saw. And on average, viewers, the average misunderstood 30%. They just made things up in their brain. They didn't do it on purpose, but that's how the brain works. We see a commercial, we all recall different things. We even add in our brain what we think we saw, and that can definitely be an issue. So when you look at your evidence, it needs to be specific, meaning right on point. It's not fuzzy. You know exactly what the study's showing, or the statistic, or the testimonial. It's unbiased. You know, Kentucky Fried Chicken doing a study on the best chicken restaurants, probably a little biased. And verifiable, meaning you just like, oh, I saw it on the internet sometime. No, here's the study, here's the journal, here's the website. Make sure it's verifiable. Next one, make sure this evidence coming from an independent expert, right? Somebody that's independent. Remember the Kentucky Fried Chicken? Not someone saying, hey, this is the best college and that's the college they teach at. Those type of things. Also, documented. It's documented somewhere. It's not just hearsay. It's not just something you saw. Remember we talked about that, but it has to be documented. Also, if you can make it new information, current information is always more persuasive than a study done in 1955. That's just how it's set up. Also, great persuaders acknowledge the other side. So in business, what that means, your competitor, you know about them, you're not bad-mouthing them, you're acknowledging their strengths, you're even acknowledging their weaknesses, but you present both sides. That makes you more persuasive in your evidence. If it's lopsided on one side, that your company's the best, there's no flaws, everyone else stinks, they're lame, they're no good, that is not persuasive. That is not good evidence. So let's talk about just some general rules based on evidence, based on research, based on studies about using evidence and increasing the power of this evidence. Let's go through these. Number 1, referring to evidence as a fact. Using the word fact increases its weight. Evidence that is specific and verifiable is always more persuasive. We talked about unbiased testimony. Somebody else that's unbiased and expert is always more persuasive than a biased one. Presenters who have not yet established their credibility will benefit more from the use of evidence than those with established credibility. Evidence is especially important when the audience is unfamiliar with the topic. Factual evidence is particularly persuasive when the audience consists of highly intelligent people. And evidence is more persuasive when you provide not only the source, but his or her qualifications. So a big part of this too is your EQ, your emotional intelligence, reading emotions, trigger emotions, handling emotions, understanding emotions. That's a big part of your success. We all know that EQ is more important for your success in business than IQ, your emotional quotient, your emotional intelligence. We know that. In fact, let me show you a few pics. And instinctively, what do you see? Take a look at them. Did you catch the first one's probably anger? Reading their face and their eyebrows. Second one's thinking. Third one's fear, mouth's open, eyes are open, gathering information, fight or flight. And the one we hate as persuaders, that last one, indifference. Right? Indifference. That means they're checked out. I'd rather have somebody angry at me than indifferent. Indifferent, they've checked out, they're not listening, they don't care, they just want to leave. That's the hardest prospect or client or customer to deal with. That's someone that's angry. Here, take a look at the picture. Someone that's angry versus indifference. Though that is very, very important in the world of emotions and persuasion and logic and balance. So let's talk about this. Emotions create movement, motivation, they create energy. It's critical. If you want to be more charismatic, more passionate, it's more emotion. In fact, take a look at the advantages of using emotion. Engage your audience and distract them from your intention to persuade them. Interesting. We're using a lot of logic, one-sided logic, any type of logic. We're like, wait a minute, you're trying to persuade me. And we know when you try to persuade somebody, they resist you. They want to be persuaded. But when you use that emotion, they feel they just feel it, and it makes it easier for them to persuade. Another one, emotions require less effort than logic. It just happens. You just feel it. Logic, analyze statistics, numbers, facts, figures. It's a different part of your brain. Emotions just happen, and that makes a big difference. Another one, presentations aimed at engaging audiences' emotions are more interesting. Again, charisma, passion, interesting. People paying attention, it's through the emotions. Logic and facts and figures, after a while, just make your eyes roll back. Now, some people, they geek out on the numbers, but most people are like, way too much. Another one, emotion-based arguments or discussions are easier to recall. You remember how it made you feel. That's what you remember, especially when it's tied into an event. To logic, it's the emotions are easier to recall, easier to remember. Final one, emotions lead more quickly to change. You want someone to change, you get them to feel it. Yeah, logic. Yeah, get them to feel it. That's the power of emotion. So let's talk about 3 emotions that you need to be aware of as a persuader, as you run your business, as you work with people. So a lot of emotions out here, but let's talk about these 3 because they're really important to understand the persuasion process. The first one is worry. When your prospect is worried or preoccupied with something occurring now or could happen in the future, it holds them back. It really does. It occupies their thoughts. That's what they're focusing on. It's almost like negative goal setting. So your job is to bring them back. So worry is a form of fear. They're worried about something that's happening now, may happen in the past, may happen in the future. They're worrying about it. And worry also comes from indecision. So you got to get them on the right track to visualize the future, the success, get past that fear. Let them know that it comes from indecision. Get them to make it just a minor decision to be able to do that. And again, focus on the future and don't let it take a lot of time. If you're worried about jumping off a cliff into the water, the more you think about it, the more you worry about it, the harder it gets. Start making minor decisions. Get them to think about their future, the vision, the solution. That's how you deal with worry. The next one, anger. When we are angry, we want attention or action now. We were upset, we've been wronged. We need to blame somebody or some situation or a company because it's not our fault in their mind. That's where the anger comes. They're looking for someone to blame. So what do? You got to acknowledge the anger. You just can't keep going. Take it if you need to. I apologize. It was not my intent. Tonight. Well, don't do it again. And just watch that anger diffuse. Let them vent, let them talk, get angry with them. Yeah, the economy, yeah, this. There's the things you can do. You just can't keep trying to persuade. You've got to deal with it. Take a break. Reschedule the meeting. Whatever you need to do can go a long way. But remember, apology is cheap. It's not always appropriate when you say, I apologize. That was not my intent. You watch them diffuse. They're looking for someone to blame. And if it's a minor thing, take it. But you have to acknowledge that anger. And final one, fear, which can be used to help or hurt persuasion. It's a tension caused by apprehension, potential harm, pain, destruction. It can be real or imagined. Fear motivates us to move away from unpleasant circumstances. Again, fear does not work in every situation, but it can be very powerful. Most life insurance, any type of insurance is bought on fear, right? That desperation. I'd rather you inspire people, but if you've run a business, you know some people are uninspirable. Fear is the only thing that motivates them, but it has to be used in the right way. A lot of people are using it in the wrong way, but fear can be powerful. But remember, every one of these emotions, there's a physiological response in the body, and things happen. When you feel fear, blood leaves the brain. When you feel anger, blood leaves the brain to your extremities, fight or flight. That's something to think about. You got to get blood back in the brain to get them to think clearly. So let's talk about the right way to use fear. The first one is you have to make it unpleasant to them, not to you. Do they really care about securing their family with life insurance? Do they really care about sleeping better at night? Are they really concerned about having a heart attack? Maybe. You have to make sure it's unpleasant. Because fear is very short term, right? There's a timing factor here to where you need to do in the same presentation, or at least rekindle that fear next time you talk to them. Second one, it's like I mentioned, imminent. The timing is so important. Asteroids are going to hit the Earth. Okay, nothing I can do about it, number one, and I don't know, it's not imminent, it's not happening tomorrow. But when you're going to use that fear, it has to be happening soon. There has to be a deadline that's soon. Hey, get back to me in the next 6 months. Doesn't trigger a lot of scarcity or urgency. Third one, you're not just using fear for fun, you're providing a solution. Fear, I'm scared, I want to move away from it, I want a solution. All right, here's the solution. If I'm scaring someone that they can't retire till they're 72, fear, I don't want to do that, I want to retire earlier. Well, here's the solution, here's your investment program, here's what you should do. Final one, capable. Are they capable of doing it? Catch that? So if you're trying to put fear into a high school student that they're going to work at fast food the rest of their life, they're going to never be able to retire, they might not know how to get better grades. They might not know what they need to do to go to a better school. Those type of things. Are they capable? Do they have the tools to do what you're asking them to do? And part of that too is the dose. If it's too much fear, okay, whatever. You see people learning how to drive, teenagers learning how to drive, watching videos of these accidents, they laugh. I mean, people got hurt in these accidents, they laugh because it's too much, doesn't have to happen to them. Their frontal lobe's not developed, they're not thinking about that. Some smoking campaigns have too much fear, have the opposite effect. Drinking campaigns, so you have to make sure the dose is a good dose, that it's enough to move them, but not too much where they just give up, whatever, nothing I can do about it. That happens to other people. So part of this balance too is understand that mood matters. Yes, mood. Is it your mood or their mood? And the answer is both. You've got to be in the right state to persuade and influence, and that's what the studies show. When you feel influential, you are more influential, but then the mood of when their mood too. That's important, their mood. I wouldn't start persuading. If they're in a bad, foul mood, I wouldn't start persuading. I mean, studies are clear. When people are in a bad mood, they recall bad things, all your failures, why they don't like you, why it won't work, triggers worry and fear. But when people are in good mood, they recall good things, why they like you, your past successes, how to work out, they think bigger, the vision, the future, the solution. So just a safety tip here, make sure you are in the right state, the right mood to persuade, and make sure they're in the right state. In fact, look at the benefits here. People in a positive mood spent more time looking at ads, have better attitudes toward advertising, more willing to help out those in need, increased chances that they would donate, and increase the likelihood of an attitude change. So can you use them both? You gotta use the logic. I'm just saying you're not using enough emotion. You're probably really good at the data dump, the logic, the facts. It's this emotional side. So some things to think about before you talk to someone that you attempt to persuade someone. These 3 questions. What is the situation? All right? Who is your audience, their demographics, and what is the likely emotion that will be created in your audience? So likely emotion is what you want to trigger. What is that likely emotion? What do you want them to feel? We'll get into their demographics. What are their fears? What are they worried about? What are they angry about? You have your logic and then the emotion. But this can backfire on you. The balance will backfire when you use the wrong dose or balance of emotion. This is caused by lack of research, triggering the wrong emotions, or not being able to adapt to the person or situation. So that's when it backfires. You're just using way too much emotion, way too much fear, way too much anger, way too much worry, way too much FOMO, whatever emotion you're trying, it's just too much. The dose is too high. Again, if I try to get you scared about that asteroid hitting the earth, you're like, okay, whatever, nothing I can do. When is it going to happen? Not going to happen tomorrow. I don't know where it's going to hit. Probably a little too much. So here's a case study. I was given an interesting assignment. A large corporation had two departments that were not cooperating and were getting insensitive and hostile towards each other. It got to the point that something had to be done to get these departments to cooperate and finish up the major project before the looming deadline. I had to let them know they're on the same team. The marketing department and the IT department could not work together. They blamed each other for the challenge and said it was the other department's fault. The CEO asked for everyone to put their differences aside and get the project done, but this did not help. Thinking about the law of balance, what is happening here? What would you do? The issue is that communication style between departments, each department had different personality styles. You have a very analytical department versus a department that might be more emotional. The way you talk to a sales department is very different than a research department. I mean, that's just how it is. And the emotions were triggering, and people weren't thinking about the logic, the facts. So this is a little bit different to where we had to reduce the emotion, look at the facts, get people to open up, to understand different communication styles, different personalities. Remember, your goal is to persuade people how they want to be persuaded, to sell them how they want to be sold, and that's where the balance comes in. Sometimes if I'm talking to a certain person, it might be a lot of emotion, a little logic. If I'm talking to an engineer, maybe it's a little more logic and just a little emotion. Those are different things that you can use, that you can do in this situation. So what is your homework? Think about your biggest objection you're getting. And logic, I want you to find a statistic or a study that refutes it. You've got this thing called the internet to help you out. And then on the emotion side, what emotion do you want to trigger to get them to say yes, to get them to take action? So you're balancing it, right? That's what you want to do. You want to balance it. So you're looking for that area when you're talking to people in your presentation where you're hitting that roadblock. Find the study, some expert, a university they've heard of, can be very helpful in that situation. And what emotion you want to trigger? Do you want to trigger a little fear? That if you don't make a decision now, the prices will go up, to trigger a little FOMO, that this is the last time it's happening this year. Whatever you need to do can be part of that process. So use this law of balance. Always use logic and emotion, but it'll change based on prospect or department or company. And you will become more persuasive, more influential, a better negotiator, and you'll be able to persuade with power. So there you have it. You're getting better at your side hustle. You're making things happen. You're learning the skills. You're analyzing yourself. And after every presentation, like, all right, what worked, what didn't work, what adjust to change, more logic, more emotion. That's part of the process. So you have your homework. And of course, let me add to that too. Tell to family, friends, and enemies about Success and Money Foundation. Use your affiliate program. Use the word of mouth. They'll like you more because, again, this is something we should have learned in school, something that's very powerful and persuasive. Start sharing it with more people, and don't be scared that they might say no. They might. But hey, when they say yes and they get involved and it changes their life, changes your life, changes everyone's life, it makes a difference and makes the world a better place.